everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Law Minister Kiren Rijiju has set the cat amongst the pigeons by announcing that the ministry is looking at amendments to the Representation of the People Act to bring in long-pending or often debated electoral reforms. This is coming even as the Election Commission recently de-recognized over 80 political parties over their dubious funding, had written to the Law Ministry all poll funding reforms, and had just 2 days back floated a consultation paper on making cost and funding of electoral promises, especially quote-unquote freebies, mandatory. CNN News 18 is learning that the ministry is contemplating bringing in reforms via Parliament on paid news, debarment of candidates, decisions on poll validity, and exit and opinion polls. We are also told that the Election Commission, which initially recused itself of any panel on freebies in the Supreme Court, has approached the Law Ministry on the need to define freebies, since the Apex Court didn't quite go into this. They are suggesting a panel to define freebies involving Niti Aayog and Law Commission. Opposition parties are already up in arms, but the big question we ask today is it not time to overhaul or change certain aspects of the Representation of the People Act, or otherwise also bring in reforms around elections and campaigning? We will take that to our guests in just a bit, but first here's a look at what the Law Minister has said. He has revealed that the centre is doing consultations with the Election Commission on poll reforms, that legislative backing might be given to certain electoral reforms that are on the table. Amendment to People's Representation Act is on the cards. He batted for this, saying changing times and situation demands an overhaul. The government aims to make a step in increasing transparency and accountability of political parties and overall, but added that the centre will take steps after due consultations, which basically suggests that all political parties will be taken on board. Let's take a look at some of the major electoral reforms that have been discussed in the public domain over the last several years. Now, political funding is the big one, where the Election Commission seeks to reduce anonymous political donations to 2,000 rupees from 20,000 and cap cash donations at 20% or maximum of 20 crore for a political party. This is something that has been discussed for a long time to bring transparency in party funding and accountability in candidates' expenditures. Remember, the ECI has written to the government just last month to bring in this reform. Then it's the whole question of freebies or cost and funding of electoral promises, especially the most outlandish one. The Election Commission has batted for this, saying that the voter has a right to be informed so that they can make an informed choice. And the election body has floated a consultation paper on this just this week. We discussed it 2 days ago on Plain Speak. One nation, one poll. The big pitch by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been in cold storage for a few years. Now, the rationale behind this electoral reform is that centre and all state elections should happen simultaneously, possibly in 2 cycles every 2.5 years, to reduce the number of months spent under MCC and campaigning, which keeps India constantly stuck in an election cycle. The idea, of course, is that this will also reduce money expenditure on repeated elections. And this has been backed by the ECI, by the Law Commission, but remember, it does need a constitutional amendment. Connected to that can also be seen the One Nation, One Voter list reform. Different lists for different polls, centre and state polls, for example, create confusion. They also hamper the credibility of these voter lists. It causes inconvenience to the public. This reform was recently demanded publicly by former Minority Affairs Minister Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi. Now, opposition parties are not quite on the same page as the government, especially on the ideas of quote-unquote freebies. Now, the Congress, for example, has criticized the move to ask for cost and funding of electoral promises, saying none of these social development schemes would work with such a bureaucratic approach. DMK, another party that is not in favor of this debate, is saying that it will negate the sense of competition, deny people's aspirations, and discourage innovative thinking by parties. Kapil Sibal, the Samajwadi Party-backed Rajya Sabha MP and former Law Minister, mind you, has attacked the Election Commission, alleging that they have done a U-turn. As I mentioned earlier, in Supreme Court, they wanted to stay out of the freebie debate or that panel per se, but now they are opening a consultation. So he says maybe the Election Commission needs a moral code of conduct. CPI, the left party, has also questioned, saying why is the EC getting into poll promises? Let the people decide which manifesto they like. So the big debate that's coming out on Plain Speak today, is it time to overhaul the Representation of the People Act, or are none of these reforms really needed? Before we go to our debate, listen in to a few more opposition voices.
If ruling BJP and Election Commission of India are on the same page, that should be actually critically examined. Why? It's a question of credibility of an institution which was very dear to us.
So it's a good move from the Election Commission of India. We too received that copy day before yesterday, and our party is going to react appropriately.
देखिए अभी हम लोगों को चुनाव आयोग का पत्र प्राप्त हुआ है, पार्टी इस पर विचार करेगी और ये मामला बहुत गंभीर है, सीरियस है.
Guru Prakash Paswan is the national BJP spokesperson. Joining us on the show today, Arshpreet Singh Kadial from the Congress Party, Reena Gupta from the Aam Aadmi Party. I'm also joined by Major General Anil Verma, who's the ADR head. They obviously look into elections, campaigning, candidates' backgrounds, etc. Mohammad Amin is former Joint Director of the Election Commission of India. Mr. Amin, let me start with you. The Election Commission is seen as pretty active and pretty driven in recent months to bring in certain reforms. As I mentioned, last month they talked about the funding reforms and caps. Just 2 days ago, they initiated the consultation on the quote-unquote freebies debate. Do you believe that the Election Commission primarily must drive these reforms? Of course, in collaboration with the Law Commission, with, of course, the Law Ministry and eventually the Parliament. What do you think of the driven agenda or the fact that the Election Commission is seeming extremely active these days on these issues?
Madam, thank you for calling me and joining with this CNN. I'm telling you about the reforms of the ECI. India election role is model for the world, not for the India only. Indian elections are role model for the world. So total autonomy we are working in the Election Commission of India. They are not working under Government of India. This is a part of country's representative. So that's why we call the RP Act. And RP Act, you see, before these parties, all the commission, always they are asking to come and join with them and discuss the things what they have, like a model code of conduct.
Right.
See, in the election time, the model code of conduct discussed with all parties. Like again, you can see they are not doing as per their promises. So that's why the ECI want to enforce, and the government is also thinking so many times. Election Commission has submitted their recommendations. Commission has recommendation has submitted to the Law Ministry for the changes.
Right.
And the Commission needed the legislature back. Means Parliament to pass these orders and give the strength to the Election Commission of India. So many times you have seen they are always criticizing to the Election Commission of India. Though Election Commission of India always fair and free poll in the country. For
So
assembly,
obviously you
for
don't-
the parliament, for the president and the vice president.
So
Yes.
you're clearly saying that obviously all of these allegations that come in, especially since 2014 and since 2019, that the Election Commission is working as an extension of the BJP are not correct and unwarranted. But the question I want to understand from you, Mr. Amin, before I move on to my other guests is, do you believe that all of these reforms that the Election Commission is currently talking about or are being discussed in public domain, including, for example, the question over quote-unquote freebies or electoral reform, funding and cost analysis, do you believe that these are absolutely necessary for Indian democracy? Because some opposition parties are opposing it.
Listen, always they are opposing. If they are not in the power, they are always opposing to Election Commission of India. Like last election you have seen in the Mamta Banerjee, she was also criticizing to Election Commission of India.
Yes.
For their interest. They were blaming to the Home Minister of India, they are blaming the Parliament, Prime Minister of India. The Election Commission is working under the Prime Minister and the Home Minister of India. It's not correct. And when she has won the election, so there is no question now about the Election Commission. And yes, win also the by-election also. So these are the things always political parties are doing. See, when the Aam Aadmi Party has one representative has asked at that time, the EVMs are hacked.
Right.
And at that time, the Election Commission of India clearly asked all party meeting and they want to demonstrate these. You do a hack, how can you do it? But they have not come at that time. Only the CPI left front has come only one representative. Other parties have not joined the
Okay.
election
I
commission.
think
of
you
India
made
on
your
that
point
day.
that these are political
Or
arguments
criticizing.
and political opposition being made, not really on substance. Since you mentioned the Aam Aadmi Party, let me go to Reena Gupta of the Aam Aadmi Party. Reena, a lot of these reforms, they're not really limited to the quote-unquote freebies debate. They're talking about, what kind of candidates should be barred, for example, from contesting elections. We've talked about criminalization of Indian politics for a very long time. They're also wanting to set a certain time period in which an election's validity should be decided, because sometimes these legal matters drag on after the term has even been completed. Are you in favor of these reforms being discussed, being put on the table? And of course, they will eventually have to come via the parliament because legislative backing will have to be given, as the law minister says.
Shivani, there are certain aspects that we agree with. I think criminals have no place in Indian politics. So any harsh laws around criminality of candidates is very welcome. But as far as the whole freebie debate is concerned, I think Bharatiya Janata Party is right now very rattled with the way the Aam Aadmi Party government has delivered in Delhi and Punjab. Because we were the ones who first started talking about, and I have a strong objection to this term freebie, we were the ones who started talking about the fact that each citizen of this country needs to have access to basic minimum services, and it is the responsibility, legal responsibility as defined in the preamble of the Constitution, as well as moral responsibility of any elected government to make sure that you provide those basic minimum responsibilities to your citizen. But we have seen that time and again Bharatiya Janata Party has not been able to deliver on its promises, be it free housing for everybody by 2022, doubling of incomes of farmers, all of that.
Okay.
And now in Gujarat, Shivani, the debate is very, very strong because electricity is very expensive in Gujarat, and the people of Gujarat are wanting to welcome Aam Aadmi Party because we have rationalized the rates of electricity in Delhi and Punjab. We have provided free electricity in Delhi and Punjab. In spite of all this, we have managed our budgets very well.
No, there is a contention on that. Reena ji, I didn't want to restrict this to the freebies alone because we are discussing larger reforms to the Representation of the People Act. But on freebies, Delhi's surplus revenue has gone down in the last few years. There is an issue of discom payment. In Punjab, you already know the debt ratio in Punjab. So we cannot quite say that all of this is not having an impact. Obviously, everybody wants something free, or governments would like to give it free. The question is, you must show to the public also, especially to taxpayers who will be funding these so-called freebies, what is the impact on them going to be? What is the impact of the state exchequer going to be eventually, 10 years down the line, etc.?
Very valid points, Shivani. First of all, I must point out that each of us, whether it's rich or poor, each of us pays taxes. So this misconception that a lot of people have that only the income taxpayers are the ones paying taxes. No, everybody, even a poor person who's buying a bag of salt is paying taxes. Secondly, if you ask me, both the Election Commission and the Supreme Court have no business to meddle in this. A manifesto is a document, is a democratic legal document between the voters and the parties. It is for the voters and the parties to decide, and we have seen time and again that the voters have punished parties that have not delivered on their manifesto. The Supreme Court has no business. In 2013, the Supreme Court very clearly said that this is not a corrupt practice. So now I don't know why the Election Commission is also going back.
I'll tell you why. The Election Commission has referred to a Supreme Court judgment of 2015 where it said that Commission should frame detailed guidelines for parties as part of the model code. Already the existing relevant EC guideline says, and I quote, "In the interest of transparency, level playing field and credibility of promise, it is expected that manifestos also reflect the rationale for the promises and broadly indicate the ways expected and means to meet the financial requirements for it." Nobody is saying that promises will be curbed. All the Election Commission, and frankly, this is a larger debate. Supreme Court is also looking at it because from the RBI to the SBI to the IS officers, government secretaries have all raised an alarm over the burden on the exchequer because of this slippery slope where everybody is promising a little bit more than the other party free. So this guideline already exists. It's just about enforcing it. Let me bring in Guru Prakash.
Shivani, just one last point.
Yes.
Shivani, give me 10 seconds.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me, the one big election reform we need right now is the validity of electoral bonds. That to my mind is the most corrupt practice thanks to the Bharatiya Janata Party. And the Bharatiya Janata Party is the biggest beneficiary of this so-called Benami Chanda, which they get every year. Last time also, in the last election cycle, 80% of the electoral bonds were given to Bharatiya Janata Party.
Fair enough. I was going to raise that point to Guru Prakash anyways, because actually the focus is not just on freebies today, Guru Prakash, it is also on electoral or party funding. The Election Commission wants a curb on donations, each donations to be curbed and cash donations to be, anonymous donations to be curbed and cash donations to be curbed. And the charge that always comes to the BJP is that you're the ones who actually benefit from electoral bonds the most. Please respond on what the Law Minister has today suggested.
Shivani, thank you so much for having me today. At the outset, we have to understand a couple of things first. I was just listening and very patiently listening to the spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party. And this is really laughable when you say that the Supreme Court of India and Election Commission of India has no business. Excuse me. Are we living in a constitutional democracy? Are we living in a parliamentary democracy? We don't operate in silos, ma'am. We have a rule of law. We have separation of power. We have independence of judiciary. We have institutions. And these institutions run the country. You cannot operate in silos. And this is very rich. This is indeed very rich coming from the Aam Aadmi Party, which has failed to pay the salary of Safai Karmachari in Delhi. Thousands of Safai Karmachari from Delhi Nagar Nigam, they have been doing hartal. I did not speak. Shivani, I did not speak when she was speaking. Shivani, this is the sanskar of Aam Aadmi Party. I was patiently listening when she was speaking.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Aam Aadmi Party, the same government has refused to pay salary to the Safai Karmachari. To the Safai Karmachari of the Nagar Nigam of Delhi. Who is responsible for that? The Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab, they have cancelled the scholarship of lakhs of students from the Dalit community. Who is responsible for that? The Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab has refused to pay the salary of the government employees in Punjab. Who is responsible for that? When we have a conversation, a fresh conversation, an independent conversation on the fiscal implications of these promises, let us have a logical and a rational debate.
What about party funding?
Why are you running away from the debate?
Guru Prakash, what about party funding?
That is point number one. Shivani, let me put this on record. We are in for a conversation on electoral reforms, be it party funding, be it one nation, one election, be it the fiscal implication. But just give me 20 seconds, I will wrap it up. We are not aware of this as Mr. Subhash Kashyap is, who is a former constitutional law expert, as the three former chief election commissioner who have categorically came in support of this. Former CEC Sunil Arora, former CEC Naveen Chawla, former CEC NN Gopalaswamy, who has categorically said that this is nothing new. And the Supreme Court itself has also validated this. We need transparency. We need accountability. I am just urging the friends from the opposition party to come and have a debate and a dialogue and a discussion. The Election Commission of India has asked for a debate. Why are you running away from the conversation?
Fair enough.
We will debate about the validity of electoral bonds. We will debate about one nation, one election. Everything. You come and debate. Don't run away from the debate.
Yeah, and also on what criteria should debar a candidate, how quickly should a validity of an election be decided. These will, of course, eventually be all in benefit for the public, I see at large. Arshpreet, why not debate this? For example, paid news, we are told, is also on the table. What should happen? What should constitute paid news? What should happen to paid news disguised as some sort of an editorial during an election, for example? Also, opinion polls and exit polls. I believe all political parties have from time to time raised an objection on these polls being aired. Wouldn't you like stricter norms on this?
See, number one, whatever we are talking about, we are discussing, the BJP, the Election Commission has to say, it should all lead to something conclusive, right? It should lead to some solutions. But the BJP talks big, unfortunately does not put that talk into action because, there is no definition of freebies in the first place. It does not find any mention in the legislative space. And number two, the BJP says that it has a problem with freebies, it has a problem with freaky reveries, but does not want to define it. And number two, I want to ask this to to the spokesperson of the BJP, that would you consider subsidy a freebie or would you not? And are you willing to define the definition? Are you willing to define freebies, give a definition to it so that, something conclusive can be done with regards to it? And number two, one thing is for sure that, subsidy might or might not be a freebie, but one thing is for sure. That is when direct money is given. For example, the Bharatiya Janata Party's 15 lakh rupees, 15 lakhs to every Indian citizen. Imagine 15 lakhs to 135 crore people. What would that do to the India's economy? What would that do to the exchequer and the burden that we already have upon us? And number two, with regards to Aam Aadmi Party's 1,000 to every single woman above 18 years of age in Punjab. Now you see, there's a debt of 3 lakh crores on Punjab's exchequer. Can it afford to do this? Because the Aam Aadmi Party had said on the very first day, after we form government, we'll be delivering it. It's been more than 6 months, let alone delivering it. They're not even talking about it because when the state's income is 10 paisa and you propose to deliver on, promises which are worth more than
That's precisely the freebie argument.
Possible?
You raised the issue of define freebies first. Actually, as I mentioned at the start of the show, the Election Commission does want the ministry to get into this. That a panel should decide what constitutes a freebie, what is good merited subsidy, what is non-merit subsidy or non-merit electoral promise. Yes,
And
Guru
there's one more
Prakash.
thing.
Yeah. Yes,
May I
Ashpreet,
add
finish
one
very
more
quickly.
thing?
Yes.
Can I come in, please?
Reena, I'm coming to you next.
See, we have tax on curd, we have tax on paneer, on lassi, on please hear me out, on wheat as well. But anyone can, make multiple donations of 20,000 without it coming under the tax
So you're
bracket.
for
Now,
that
how is
reform,
possible?
right? You're for that
Yes.
reform. The Congress party
see.
is very much for anonymous and cash donations to be curbed, right?
One more thing to it. What's more important is we should have a solution. If the taxpayers are paying tax on 20 rupees ki lassi or milk on doodh, why should the people who are contributing 20?
But Ashpreet, the
20,000
question that I want to ask you is, if tomorrow the ministry says, okay, let's come on board and decide what constitutes a freebie, what doesn't. Are you for that? Are you for that consultative process?
Yes, we want to contribute to it because
Okay,
this is
fair
just
enough.
talk. It's just big talk.
Fair enough. Guru Prakash, big talk, nothing really materializes. Reena, I'm coming to you next. Yes, Guru Prakash.
Shivani, the people of India realize this, that this is opposition for the sake of opposition. There is no logical or concrete argument towards it. This is just opposition for the sake of opposition. What are you afraid of? At one end, you say that Constitution bachao, Samvidhan khatre mein, when these institutions which carry the burden of Constitution on their shoulders, Election Commission of India, Supreme Court of India, if they have come forward to have a logical discussion on this, then why are you running away from it?
That's
we are
too
only in for a fresh conversation. You have problem with electoral bonds. We come and discuss about it. But the problem is larger here. The problem is fiscal responsibility. Where do you fix the fiscal responsibility of the government? For the first time, Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, FRBM Act, it came when Atal Bihari Ji became the Prime Minister of our country. The fiscal deficit, isn't it the duty, a collective responsibility of citizens of India to contain the fiscal deficit of our country? Or just do the mindless spending? When you have a vision for it, you substantiate it with a fiscal plan. That what
I
is
think
going
the
to be your
Election
income,
Commission
what
in
is
any
going to be your
case will not be
expenditure.
able to curb what promises made. Only the process that has started today is that, okay, you at least tell the public that how are you going to fund it? That's not an unreasonable demand to make. But Reena Gupta, please respond to you. BJP and Congress both are asking this a question to you. One, how can you say in a constitutional democracy that EC has no role, Supreme Court has no role? Then why do you pose questions to these bodies when you have an issue? Secondly, Congress is also raising the problem about your fiscal prudence in a state like Punjab.
Shivani, since both A team and B team have gotten together, please allow me some time to respond to each of these points raised by them. First of all, Shivani, let's remember from where did this freebie debate start? It started from the Honorable Prime Minister calling these reveries. Then they got one of their karyakartas to file a petition in Supreme Court. They did not get a favorable response from the Supreme Court. So now, when the Election Commission is raising this issue, the question needs to be asked that why is it only now that the Election Commission is raising this issue? That's point number one. Point number two, in Punjab, our government has just been in power for 6 months. The Congressis and the Akalis ruined Punjab. and the fiscal management of Punjab. In just 6 months of an honest government, Shivani, the GST collection for the month of September has gone up by 26%. This is what happens when you have an honest government, where small traders know that they don't have to pay bribe. They are all very happy paying taxes in an honest manner.
But then you shouldn't have a problem, Reena, with, as per your electoral promises or your manifesto, also filling up that form that the Election Commission has sent to political parties saying that, okay, you also give us details how you're going to fund these political promises. You shouldn't have a problem with that then.
No, Shivani, as I said earlier also, this manifesto is a document between the voters and the political parties. Media actually has a role to play. Media can point out, this is what you promised last time and you did not deliver on X, Y and Z.
But we want to move one step further. We want to discuss how you plan to fund it.
So
we want to move one step further.
How will you, Shivani, how will you define freebies? You know,
that of course.
I'll tell you what freebies are.
Right.
The Gujarat government buying a 200 crore airplane for their chief minister, that is a freebie. The BJP government writing off 10,000 crore loans of his friends and families, that is freebie.
Those loans were not written off. You're getting into that dangerous category once again.
Those loans were written off. I'm not saying waiving off.
Okay.
They were written off. I understand what I'm saying. And I choose my words very carefully. Those loans were written off.
But they're still being recovered.
They're not being recovered.
That money is still being recovered. No, you're talking about fraudsters. That money is being recovered. We discussed that. Reena, we discussed that.
Also, you know, why is bringing down the rate of corporate tax? Why is that not a freebie?
All right, fair enough. I want to go across to Major General Anil Verma, who's not spoken. As a body and as someone who looks at election candidates' backgrounds, their funding, do you welcome these reforms that the Election Commission is talking about and batting for today, and the Law Minister is batting for? Interestingly, debarring of candidates, how long should it take to decide whether a poll is valid or not, exit polls, opinion polls, even something like paid news. What reforms do you hope to see in times to come?
Thank you, Shivani. I waited 25 minutes for my turn to come. Now, please allow me 2-3 minutes and I'll cover all my points in one go. The main issues in the electoral and political reforms are transparency in political funding, criminality, accountability and inner party democracy in the political parties. So there is a whole lot of electoral reforms which have been submitted to the Government of India by various institutions, including the Election Commission of India. We sent a list of 40 odd reforms some time back. We are in favor of the government looking at these reforms, but not cherry picking the reforms to be implemented. The whole gamut must be addressed. Now, coming specifically to this point, we have to firstly come on to a definition of the freebies that is best left to the court to decide, because otherwise the political parties will always have different views, and rightly so. But in this case, nobody has mentioned whether the government is also planning to consult the political parties. They have, of course, the ECI has written to the political parties, and by 19th October, they are supposed to reform.
No, I think I mentioned at the top, the statement that we have got from the Law Minister indicates that consultations will be held before these reforms.
Okay, that is a good, that's a good this thing.
Right.
So now coming to the cash donations and this thing, I'll take a minute on this. As far as the ADR's research goes and the statistics we put out, about 70% of the donations received by the political parties are from unknown sources. And the biggest amount in that, the chunk, is from electoral bonds, because we consider it as unknown source because we don't know who the donor is. The amount which is received as cash donations is minuscule. I am repeating, it is minuscule. So we are not looking at the elephant in the room, which is the electoral bonds. 10,243 crores has been received by the political parties in these 4 years since the scheme has been. Now the government calls it transparent, we call it opaque. ECI has taken a U-turn in two matters. One was in the case of electoral bonds when it was heard in the Supreme Court. And secondly, now in this case of freebies, which is being discussed, Election Commission earlier said we have no business to be doing anything in this as far as the cash donations and other thing goes. And now they have come out with this. But the fact is that it is a very important issue. So whether it is a case of alluring voters, are we bribing them? And we have to, of course, focus on the amount of public expenditure. What is the interest on the debt servicing? What is the budget deficit? How much of deficit financing is going away? But the economic growth of the country has to continue. So it is very important that, this definition of freebies is given.
Okay.
And lastly, my point is that it is a positive step. The government must consult the political parties and the stakeholders and implement some of these reforms. But I may also like to add that there are parties like the BSP, which has for the last 15 years said we have not got any donation about 20,000 rupees. Now, how can anybody believe that? And what has the ECI or the courts or anybody in the government done about
I think the proof will be in the eating of the pudding, in the sense that now when these discussions happen, if political parties really engage in a positive debate and discussion, we'll know that they truly stand for this. Otherwise, we've seen how discussions in Parliament have gone on certain reforms, and these, the Law Ministry is indicating, will be brought in via amendments to the Representation Act. I've run out of time. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. We'll continue to take this debate forward. Remember, we've been focusing on the issue of quote-unquote freebies very, very prominently on Plain Speak. Time for a short break, though. On the other side, we discuss how portrayal of King Raja Cholan in the movie PS1, Penniyan Selvan 1, has become a full-blown controversy. Why? More on the other side.